Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers podcast. I'm Evan Nash, joined as always by Cory Puffett, who's laughing already, and Eric Meyer. What is funny?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. Are you
Cory's,
sure?
Cory's just
I'm just a happy guy.
Okay.
He's having a good time.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
love doing
we'll
this.
see how happy you are when you talk about your Yankees, who can't baseball right now.
He's got the shirt on, still repping him. Give him props for that.
I'm not a fair weather fan. I will always be a Yankees fan.
To be
but
fair,
it's
been
not...
bright and sunny for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, more
You've
or
had
less.
some overcast days every now and then. You never had torrential downpours or hurricanes.
For a team that's won 27 titles, it's kind of rough when you haven't won one since 2009.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
27's a
Your poor
meaningless
thing.
number.
Evan is over here like, boo-hoo.
Yeah, 27 means nothing to me. When Yankee fans bring up, 27 rings, I'm like, yeah, virtually all of those came before anybody who mentions it were born. So,
Or before their parents were
yes,
born,
like,
frankly.
Don't care. Don't care about your 27 rings. Let's talk about the now in modern sports when, league actually regulated certain things.
Like allowing black people to play. For example.
Like that, yeah. That's one thing they used to regulate all the time. Then they stopped regulating that, which was,
Anyway, let's get into it. So we've got some baseball, obviously, some NBA. There's been some NFL news. Julio Jones to the Titans. I'm not happy about that.
It's a big trade.
Yeah.
They're restructuring Ryan Tannehill's contract to make it work.
Oh, really?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
And then A.J. Brown, when they got there, offered his number 11 to Julio Jones. And he was like, nah, bro, you can take it. So A.J. posted something on Twitter today, like, respect and 11 till I retire.
Okay. Well, I mean, since we're here, let's just get into it then. So I'm not happy about this, obviously. I hate the Titans so much. I'm so tired of them.
Y'all have played them 2 years in a row in the playoffs, is that right?
Yeah.
it also harkens back to the days of the AFC Central.
Yes.
Central, yeah, and that was sort of the Steelers-Ravens before Steelers-Ravens existed.
Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I hate them so much. Oh my God, really, they get this guy of all the teams to get, one of the best receivers who's available. Of course, he goes to an AFC team, and of course, he goes to Tennessee.
Well, and especially because the Ravens were supposedly interested as well. So not only do you miss on them, they get them.
I mean, the Ravens were interested, but I don't know how they could make the money work. Right? Like, I mean, it's going to be restructuring a whole bunch of people. I just didn't see it as a possibility. That was Fantasyland type stuff. Are we frozen?
No.
By any chance?
No, we're good.
Am I frozen?
You're not frozen. I
Are
see.
y'all there?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh.
Oh, jeez.
Evan can't hear me, so
I
this
think
is
Skype
this
is
is Skype
crashing
issue.
on my end.
No, it's not on
actually.
your end. No, don't close it, Evan. It's on my end.
He's
You know,
gonna
if we're
close
on
it.
live.
Yeah, he's gonna close it. I'm gonna try and hopefully I get his attention there.
Oh,
Well, then,
okay.
Then I'm gonna.
So you
talk
can
about-
still hear me?
I'm going to talk about Julio Jones now, while Cory.
I'll fix Skype. You talk.
Okay,
Eric.
so
Yeah.
for anybody who's listening live, we're having technical difficulties.
I don't know if
Corey's
Evan can
Skype
be
is
heard
frozen,
here.
and mine is working, which is different. No, I don't hear Eric.
Oh, well, that's not good. Okay, anyway, Julio Jones
Yeah,
is
I
going
don't,
to
I
the
don't hear
Titans.
Eric either.
And
Isn't this fun?
this is great.
All right,
I
I'm
love
closing
having
out,
people in my ear,
so,
but not being able to actually speak.
try this.
'cause-
But yeah, we're talking about.
Yeah, sorry, Evan. Sorry for cutting you off.
Okay, so now I'm going to go.
There you go.
All right, Julio Jones to the Titans. Pretty big deal. Maybe a little deal. I don't know. When I saw this, I was intrigued because I kind of worried a little bit about the Titans coming into this year.
They've been adding.
Wait, have you been talking this whole time, Evan?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay.
I have to close Skype to fix it for you to be able to hear us. So Eric was talking. Apparently, you were talking after I closed Skype. So.
Yeah, this is a professional podcast.
Yes,
as you
it
can
is.
Tell. We are a hot mess.
We're with it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go again for the fourth time now to try to talk about.
I used to
Julio
host
Jones.
a podcast by myself. Think I just can't fill time.
Well,
When it's
yeah, that's the whole point, is filling time. Anyway, Julio Jones, take 5. He is going to the Titans, which is really bad for the rest of the AFC, maybe, because the Titans had one of the best offenses in the NFL last year. They were top 5, I believe, in DVOA. Ryan Tannehill has been spectacular since he took the starting job in the middle of the 2019 season. But they lost Corey Davis, they lost Jonnu Smith, and they lost Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, who took the Falcons job. So they seem to be a candidate for a little bit of a step back offensively just because they lost some of their pieces. They lost their coordinator. New guy comes in. But adding Julio Jones erases all that concern because he's better than any of the guys that they lost. He makes up for them pretty much all by himself. But does this put the Titans in the Super Bowl contender area? I would say maybe. It depends on what their defense can do. Like last year, they had a lot of linebacker injuries. Their pass rush was terrible, but they spent a lot of money upgrading. They signed Bud Dupree. So their defense could take a big step forward. And, a lot of people say stuff like, well, this team's defense or offense is a question mark. Well, a lot of times they really just mean that team's defense is bad when they say it's a question mark. In this case, it's legitimately a question mark. We don't really know what to expect from it. It could be a lot better, and if it is, they're going to be right there in the AFC.
I think it will be better. As you mentioned, there were a lot of linebacker injuries, and that was a part of the reason why they couldn't generate a pass rush. And it's also a reason why on the back end they had some troubles. Because I think that they did have a good defense on paper last year as far as the roster that they had together for that defense. They would have been really good, at least upper middle of the league, I think, if it wasn't for those injuries. You mentioned they're bringing Bud Dupree. They also signed Janoris Jenkins and Danico Autry, 3 good signings. They did lose a few guys. Malcolm Butler's not coming back, but he hasn't really been that effective recently.
Yeah, that's not a huge
same
loss.
with Kenny Vaccaro. Adoree Jackson wasn't that good last year. So I'm okay with them losing those. I think overall their defense definitely improves between getting guys healthy, bringing in these additions. Hopefully some of these defensive players that they drafted this year, they drafted a couple of cornerbacks and a linebacker. Hopefully they end up being good, but obviously they're going to be rookies, so who really knows? Those are for sure question marks. But I think their defense is going to be more than good enough to support this stellar offense that they already had and only gets monumentally better with this signing of Julio Jones.
Yeah, this is bad for the Ravens, and I do wonder about the Titans defense. It was straight up bad last year. We can't even say it was a question mark. It was bad. And then, they've obviously made some moves to address it, but Julio Jones isn't playing defense. So that their defense or their offense wasn't the issue last year. They even still won their division. So I think they're locks to win the division. I don't think they're in Kansas City, Cleveland, Buffalo territory in the AFC.
Well, I would say Kansas City is tough because Kansas City is so loaded. Saying that any team is on their level feels like sacrilege, even if they are. But, Buffalo, I can see the argument that Buffalo is still ahead of them. I can see the argument the other way too. But based on what we saw last year, yeah. But Cleveland, I think this bumps them at least to Cleveland's level, if not a little bit above them.
think they're above Cleveland.
I think so. And that's not to say that Cleveland is a bad team or even necessarily that they're overrated, but I do think that this makes the Titans more intriguing and certainly more scary of a team to face in the playoffs than I would consider the Browns to be.
Oh, yeah. And the Titans aren't a team that I wish was banished to Thursday Night Football exclusively anymore.
Well, I mean,
Like,
that whole
interesting.
AFC South division 2 or 3 years ago, you didn't ever want to watch any of their games.
Yeah, and they'd always match them up against each other. So you're not believing in the Carson Wentz-led Colts then, Evan, if you're giving the division to the Titans? Yeah, I think that's probably a safe bet, too.
The only other really intriguing team out of that division, to me, is the Jaguars, and they're not on the Titans.
They're not.
Why
really,
are they intriguing?
Well,
what?
They're intriguing because of the players they drafted, because of Trevor Lawrence.
Because of Trevor Lawrence, that's it.
Yeah,
that's all.
That's the end
of
of the list.
Yeah, I mean, so they're just as interesting. Well, probably maybe a pinch more interesting than the Bengals were this year with Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow made the Bengals watchable. Like, they were a crap team, and he made them pretty competitive. They beat the Titans, but when he got hurt, the Bengals went right back to being the Bengals. So.
And then they beat the Steelers after that.
Yes, they did. That bizarre, awesome game that was on national TV.
In front of everybody.
Yes, in front of the whole world, or at least the football watching one. But
the team did it first. So.
I think I agree with Cory. I think that this bumps Tennessee sort of into that second tier, below Kansas City, but in the mix with the teams that, if things go right, could dethrone Kansas City or have the best shot at least in the AFC. If you ask me to rank them, I would still probably put Buffalo and Cleveland ahead of them, but they're on the same level, I think.
Okay. Let's see. Let's jump over to the NBA in the playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets in the East. Yes, playoffs. Opened up the can and a 2-0 lead on Milwaukee.
They're just hoping they can win a game.
Yeah. Yeah, one game.
Yeah. Mike Budenholzer's hoping they can win a game, or else he might get fired before the series is over. My goodness
gracious! What's going on with Coach Bud?
Coach Bud Bud is being Coach Bud again, where he has no idea what to do in the playoffs, how to make an adjustment to save his life, or he just makes all the wrong ones. But I didn't watch either of the games in this series. I didn't get to watch game 1 because I don't remember what I was doing. And yesterday was my birthday, and I was out doing stuff yesterday, so I didn't have an opportunity to really tune in, at least until like the second half. And I looked at the score on my phone, and I said, oh, well, not worth watching that one. It's a blowout. So I just didn't bother with it. But game 1, I see that they lose by 8 points, and I'm like, but they held Brooklyn to 115 points, which is not a ton by Brooklyn Nets standards. It's just that the Bucks didn't score well. Chris Middleton had 13 points on 24 scoring attempts, which is horrible. Like, typically, league average would have you have like 26 points on 24 scoring attempts. So that's a 13-point difference right there that would have probably been the difference in the game had he played remotely well, especially being the fact that he's their second best player. So that's a bit of a disaster for them. You figured he would bounce back. He didn't. Nobody bounced back in game 2. The Bucks were sitting there refusing to attack the paint against a team that can't defend the paint. Like, Giannis should be owning the Nets, should be dominating the paint, scoring 40 every game because they have absolutely no answer for him. And then it comes to find out James Harden got hurt in the first minute of game 1. He's played 43 seconds in this series. So you got a big opportunity to steal a game on the road without James Harden on the court. It's no longer a big 3, it's just a big 2. Now, those big 2's still really good, but very winnable games, and they didn't get it done in game 1 because Chris Middleton was awful, and they just didn't even show up for game 2. I don't know what you do here, because you're clearly out of ideas when you're sitting there trying to run a zone defense on a team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Joe Harris. What are you doing? Like, this is the NBA. This isn't participation league, give me a trophy bull crap. This is real deal competition. Why are you playing zone defense ever, let alone against this team? That is so weak. And Rick Carlisle did the same damn thing in Game 7 in the Clippers-Mavs series. We'll get to that a little bit later.
Oh, zone seems to work for Syracuse in the playoffs.
When was the last time they won? Yeah. We've talked at length about
Yes,
my disdain for zone defense. And the thing is, I understand why people do it when certain teams can't shoot. Like, I understand the logic behind it. It's a strategic effort to exploit a weakness. That's not happening in the NBA. These dudes are knocking down shots. You're just refusing to play any man defense because you don't want to get cooked. You're just like, okay.
But they're getting cooked.
Yes, they are. But they're getting cooked as a collective, not as one-on-one. I don't have to watch my best player get embarrassed. I don't have to watch Giannis get embarrassed by Kevin Durant. This is about not being willing to man up and lose with dignity. We have to cower behind his own defense to still give up a bunch of threes. I'm just like, no, play some man defense, make them work for their points a little harder. Didn't do it. Just completely folded after the first 12 minutes of the game. It was just like, yep, that's it. We lost. Let's go home. And frankly, it's embarrassing. This is supposed to be the year that the Bucks had a chance to make a run. And it looks like they did their whole thing where they go supernova in the first round against, for the previous couple of years was against the Orlando Magic, so who cares? But this is supposed to be a statement win against the Heat when they swept them, because the Miami Heat were the team that beat them last year and represented the East in the NBA Finals. So this is supposed to be some type of turning point. They go head-to-head with the big challenge. This is supposed to be the defining series of the postseason. Everybody had this matchup circled and said, this could decide who takes home the trophy this year. Well, looks like the Nets are taking home the trophy because the Bucks have quit.
Oh, okay.
I did see, I don't know if you saw today, Jay Williams was talking about supposedly a conversation that he had a while back with KD where he suggested that if KD and Anthony Davis had a baby, then from a, like, just physically, that baby would be Giannis. And I didn't completely get what Jay was going at, but supposedly when KD heard Jay Williams say that, he was like, don't you ever compare me to Giannis. And so when Jay Williams said that on TV today, or maybe it was yesterday, KD tweeted something this morning basically saying that Jay Williams was lying, that conversation even happened. I didn't really understand what was going on there, but I'm curious, just Eric, do you think, because you watch the NBA way more than Evan or I, or certainly I do, is there a KD Giannis rivalry that you have perceived?
No. This is the like when I first saw the thing about KD Giannis rivalry, I'm like, when's that ever been a thing? Like, Giannis plays in Milwaukee. Kevin Durant has until this year strictly played basketball in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
They've never even met in big playoff matchups. There's not really a rivalry there, unless they built it over the last 12 months, which frankly I didn't see. And everything that they've said publicly, they've shown nothing but respect for each other. There hasn't been any type of pot shots taken or anything like that. And, you know, I don't know what the hell Jay Williams thought he heard or whether he just made this up. But I see this and I'm just like, okay, so even if he said this to you in private, why are you airing a private conversation unsolicited in front of everybody saying it's personal for Kevin Durant with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who everybody likes? Like, nobody has an issue with this guy in the league. Like, they all like the Greek Freak because he's a likable guy. And Giannis doesn't seem to have any beef with Kevin Durant. The only guy we've ever seen Giannis really beef with was Russell Westbrook, because Westbrook beefs with everybody.
Yeah.
That's his MO. So,
you know, it's interesting though, because you also bring up something that we've talked about very recently on the show in reference to Shannon Sharpe on Undisputed, and you know, when he called Julio Jones live on air. And while this is not a live situation, it's still kind of it's in the same vein where you are bringing a private conversation into the public on TV. So even if that conversation had happened, you know, I mean, that's interesting to kind of think about. You know, should Jay Williams be bringing that up regardless?
And
probably not.
I don't really even understand what the point of this was, because if you sit there, you're admitting that you don't know basketball if you're saying that you think Giannis Antetokounmpo is some splice of Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant. It doesn't really make any sense. They're both tall. yeah, welcome to the NBA. Everybody's tall. Like that doesn't matter. Is that supposed to impress me? Like, how are they physically similar? Giannis is bigger than both of those guys. Like, he's stronger than both of those guys. He plays a more physical game than both of those guys. So where's the physicality coming from? Anthony Davis is a tall man. Kevin Durant is the epitome of tall man, not big man. Giannis plays like a big man. I mean, I just don't understand why Jay thought that was even a thing. And then Kevin Durant supposedly got indignant about being compared to Giannis. Like, maybe he said something like, I don't play anything like Giannis, and somehow that became a personal thing because they don't play anything like each other. That would be a reasonable take. But this idea that Kevin would be offended by just even being in the same sentence as Giannis doesn't add up at all. I mean, why the hell would it? In fact, Durant probably would take it as a compliment that you're saying, okay, well, you're saying I'm a tough guy.
I will say, when I first saw because Rashawn has sent me all of this, and when I first saw KD's tweet, like, my initial reaction is to be like kind of anti KD in that specific context, because he's been kind of a clown on social media before.
He's got a track record of acting a fool on Twitter, so.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like this was more Jay Williams' problem. But I was more just asking, because I was curious whether there was any rivalry. It sounds like no, there is not.
Yeah, I only saw this because I saw this in the notes. So I searched into Twitter KD, and then I saw, as soon as I typed KD, Jay Williams was after it. I was like, oh, this must be what Cory's talking about. And then I watched it. I was like, well, because KD and Jay Williams had a relationship. Like, when he was with Golden State, they did some stupid, not interesting show on ESPN, like a web series type of thing where I think it was called The Boardroom or something like that, where it was almost like about players and their off the court investments or something like that. I'm like, am I trying to take stock advice from KD and Jay Williams? It didn't really make any sense to me. And so Jay Williams kind of became a bit of a Kevin Durant slurper, if you will. I mean, he got offended on KD's behalf that the Golden State Warriors crowd was chanting MVP for Steph Curry when he's at the free throw line. You know, the guy that's won 2 MVPs. Because where's the love for KD? I'm like, this isn't about KD. Like, what are you talking about?
I think this whole thing is kind of, middle school girlish type of, nonsense.
And this is
like,
this is the exact reason why I have a hard time. Even though I don't think this one's Kevin's fault, it's just I get tired of this. I was even thinking about this yesterday as I'm looking at the score and I'm looking at, wow, what did Kevin Durant do? Wow, he tore them up. And I was thinking, it's pretty nice to see Kevin Durant just go out there and play basketball and be great, because that's what he was for the first 10 years of his career, basically. And then the clown crap came right after that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I don't root for you anymore. And I'm right back to it. I was like, the Nets became, I hate to say it because I don't wish injury on anybody, but without James Harden out there, they're a little more tolerable, because James Harden plays a certain way that rubs me the wrong way, and obviously I'm never going to see eye to eye with Kyrie Irving on anything because, well, yeah. But, Kevin was the most redeemable one because all he has to do is put the phone down and just play ball, and we'll all like him again. But he just, even in this case, not necessarily his fault, but it spawned because he had to respond. He could have easily just said in a post-game press conference, yeah, I don't have any beef with Giannis. That's nothing. Instead, he calls him an effing liar on Twitter. Maybe he is. Maybe he deserved it, but I'm tired of you saying it.
Alrighty. The other series in the East, the Hawks take Game 1 in Philadelphia. Apparently, Doc Rivers says that Ben Simmons is punished for his size. I didn't think that was a thing.
Well,
when,
essentially,
being tall was an advantage in this sport.
I mean, after the game, Doc Rivers basically implied that the refs, and he says that he's been documenting cases of this throughout the season, that the refs tend to call fouls on Ben Simmons purely because he is bigger. He's like 6'11", I think.
Yeah.
And because he plays aggressively. And so they call fouls on him that should not be fouls. They're just defense, at least according to Rivers.
Well, to that point, historically, bigger guys have been called for fouls in situations that smaller guys wouldn't have been. It's just the nature of it. When you, like, Steph Curry gets away with a lot playing defense. Like, because he has to. He has no choice. He's 6'3", and he's not going to be able to sit there and just completely shut somebody down. He has to get a little physical. But because he's not as physically imposing, when he reaches in or he bangs bodies with somebody or something like that, you don't see the same effect. Meanwhile, Ben Simmons, who is huge, he could get into legal guarding position and take away a driving path, and if he's guarding somebody who's 40 pounds lighter than him, and that guy gets bumped and he goes flying, doesn't necessarily mean it's a foul, but it looks like a foul. And this happens on both sides of the floor. The big men oftentimes don't get foul calls because their size doesn't show a reaction. Like, there's an inertia to them that has a negative effect on smaller players and doesn't really faze them. So the refs get a little bit tricked by it. There is something to bigger players not getting the same benefit of the doubt from the refs when it comes to the foul calls. But at the same time, I think just about anybody...
Is this why the 76ers lost the game?
No, they lost the game because they couldn't stop Trae Young.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was basically it. They couldn't stop Trae Young. And partially because, sorry, Doc, but made bad decisions. I mean, you had your fourth best defender guarding Trae Young for most of the game. Danny Green was guarding Trae Young, and it was a disaster. Ben Simmons or Matisse Thybulle should have been guarding Trae Young.
Well, it sounded like they wanted Simmons guarding him, but he kept getting called for fouls that were wishy-washy, and so they had to take him off of him.
Well, there's also the small fact that Trae Young is an outstanding foul baiter. Like, he is James Harden light when it comes to that. He's very much capable of stealing foul calls, partially because he's tiny. And so any flop or movement that he does is going to be like, oh, wow, he must have hit him really hard. Foul call. And it happens all the time. But it doesn't matter. I still think that the fact that Danny Green was guarding him for as long as he was a terrible idea. And when they switched it up a little bit, that's when they got back into the game. But, I mean, I don't know what to make of the Sixers with Embiid's knee injury. I don't care what they say, he's not 100%, because there was a whole lot of alley-oops flying over his head that normally wouldn't have been happening. He would have been blowing those up all day. He clearly doesn't have it all because he's playing on a torn meniscus. Like, I don't give a damn what anybody says about, oh, well, it's not that bad of a tear. It's a torn meniscus, man. You're not going to be 100% out there. You're not going to have all your quickness. You're going to be dealing with some pain. There's no way he's out there playing 100%. And if he's not 100%, I don't see how they win a title. I just don't. He's their best player. He's got to be healthy.
Okay. I did a quick Google search, and it says that Trae Young is 6'1". So
yes, not big, not big.
NBA
at all.
tiny.
Yes.
All right. I mean, do you have anything else to add in the East before we head out west?
Not particularly. I'm disappointed, obviously, that Embiid isn't fully healthy because I think that the Sixers and the Nets would be an interesting matchup if he was. But then again, if Harden's not healthy, that could be an equalizer as well. But the Sixers have to get past the Hawks first, and that's not going to be easy. They're playing really well.
I mean, are the Sixers doing a bit of what the Knicks were doing and just assume that they were going to beat the Hawks? Like, I feel like the Knicks, they finally had a non-terrible season, and they're like, oh, well, we made the playoffs now. We're just going to roll right through these people.
The idea that the Knicks would assume that they'll beat anybody ever.
That's a terrible assumption, especially the Hawks. The Hawks were better than them. I said that on this podcast. I said, the Knicks, they had an overachieving record because they grinded every day, but eventually talent's going to win out in the postseason, and it did. They lost in 5 games. They almost got swept.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Before we go west, there's been, I'm not sure if it's a Woj bomb or not, but we got an ESPN alert that Nikola Jokic wins his first NBA MVP award.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts?
That's what we figured would happen. So,
okay.
Congratulations to him. It's well deserved, and hopefully his team has a little more success going up against the Suns now.
Yep.
Yes, the Suns won Game 1 over his Denver Nuggets. I guess the Suns are legit. I mean,
yeah, they are. I mean, they're a good team. I know that they beat the Lakers that were sort of a mash unit because LeBron's not 100% and Anthony Davis missed a bunch of time, but
they're the defending champs still.
They're the defending champs, and the fact that the Lakers had to be fully healthy just to even compete with the Suns said that the Suns are pretty good. Like, if it was fully healthy Suns versus fully healthy Lakers, I think the Lakers win the series, but it's still close. I think it goes at least 6 games, and considering that what I think of a fully healthy Lakers team, I think that team wins a championship. that says that I think the Suns are not that far behind. So the Suns are definitely capable of beating the Nuggets in a 7-game series. And
Do you think the Suns are the team to represent the West in the NBA Finals?
no, I still think that the Jazz are the team to beat right now. I would have said the Clippers, but I'm off the Clippers after what I saw going up against Dallas. Dallas had no business even being in that series. They had one guy. They had one guy out there, and you've got
It's Luka. Luka Doncic is great.
Yes, he is, but he shouldn't have been that great. There was some serious flaws and some lack of ability that surprised me for the Clippers to not be able to play defense, and I don't think that's going to work out great for them going up against the Jazz, where they don't have home court advantage, and the Jazz are a lot deeper than Dallas is. They're going to have to stop 4 or 5 guys instead of just one.
Did the Mavericks choke? Like they were up 2-0, coming home for game 3 and 4, and they somehow lost 4 out of 5.
They were also up 11-0 in I think it was game 3. That they were up 11-0 and blew it.
Yeah, they were up 19 points in game 3 early. It was like 30-11, and Rick Carlisle made a questionable decision to take Luka out of the game for rest. When it's at that point, it's like, no, let him finish the quarter. And
You have to step on their throat.
because the series is over
Right.
if you win that game, and then by halftime, I think the Clippers might have been ahead. So it was a pretty quick turnaround, but I hesitate to call it a choke just because there was never a point where I thought, okay, this is either an elimination game or effectively an elimination game where I was like, okay, the Mavericks have seized control and are about to send them home, and then they just fell apart. I just think the Clippers were ultimately the better team, and it finally showed up in Game 7. Game 6 was very back and forth. Game 5 was very competitive. Now, had they lost Game 5 after being up 14, I would have said, okay, they definitely choked that game away. But they didn't. They held on and won that game. So I don't consider it a choke. I think it was just a matter of time before the Clippers woke up, and they woke up just in time before their season was over.
Okay. Has the Clippers and Jazz series started yet?
I think it starts tonight. I think Game 1 is tonight. And I think that's going to be a good series just because supposedly the two best players in the series both play for the Clippers. But I don't know. Like I said, I worry about the defense for the Clippers, and I think that I also worry a little bit about the Jazz's defense, whether they can actually defend Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, because they've got Royce O'Neal, who does a good job defending one of those guys, so probably guard Kawhi. But that just tells me that Paul George is going to have to step up and be the guy, and that's happened exactly 0 times ever in the history of planet Earth. So that's why I'm saying the Jazz are going to win this series, because you're counting on Paul George to be the guy that steps up and delivers. That's
Counting
not
on playoff P.
That's not
in
in
the
his
playoffs.
bag. He was very pedestrian in a series against a team that had absolutely no answers for him defensively, and it didn't matter. He was just out there letting Kawhi do everything because Kawhi was amazing and they couldn't guard him either. But the Jazz are going to have some options to throw at Kawhi. Paul George is going to have to be the next guy up, and, well, that's not going to happen because he's Paul George. He's proven it time and time again he cannot handle being the lead dog in a playoff team, especially when, okay, you've got to do it now, dude. You're the number 2, the number 1's being taken away. Step up. Fart noise. Never happens.
What about when he was in Indiana with that Pacers team that challenged LeBron and the Heat? Yeah, wasn't that in the Eastern Conference Finals? They went pretty deep, didn't they?
Yeah, they went 7 games, and that was because Roy Hibbert was a problem. It had nothing to do with Paul George.
Okay.
Paul George was the leading scorer for the Pacers, so the perception is that he was going toe-to-toe with LeBron James. That's not based in reality, though. Paul George he played okay, but it was the Indiana defense that was giving those Heat teams a bunch of problems. It was definitely not because, wow, Paul George is stepping up and he's on LeBron James's level. That's so far from reality.
Okay. Anything else to add on the 2 West Conference semifinals?
The NBA Siberia Bowl that's been rejuvenated Part 3 is actually pretty interesting, so if you've got time to watch some of those games, I would check them out. And, of course, the Jazz are involved in a series with the Clippers, which kind of avoids the Siberia factor because you've got an LA team there, too. but I think styles make fights, and I think the Jazz are going to win that series. It's worth checking out as well. The Eastern Conference, I'm over it. I'm done with it. I don't care.
Okay. All right. Speaking of stuff we care probably too much about, Major League Baseball, the Orioles are just absolutely on fire. Just close Pratt Street right now and play in the World Series parade. Just do it. It's happening. So since our last show, the Orioles have won 3 entire games, which is amazing.
Eric's over here raising the roof.
Yes, yes, indeed. So the Orioles are 3-1 since our last podcast last Wednesday. They've only played 4 games just because they've had so many off days. There was an off day last Thursday. There was an off day yesterday, and there's another off day this Thursday.
Well, to be fair, they're playing a game tonight, so that'll be 5 games in 6 days since our last show because we are a day early in the week.
Oh, okay. Well, then they have another day off this week, right?
Yeah,
We've got a
that's
2-game series against the Mets.
Yeah, the Dodgers had like 2 weeks in a row of that earlier this season. I was getting frustrated because Mookie Betts is on my team, and I'm like, I can't use him on Monday or Thursday this week or next week. Are you kidding me?
Yesterday was brutal. I was just looking up and down, and I was like,
there were 3 games in all of Major League Baseball. You can't do that. Come on, MLB.
Killing us, man. Killing us.
Yeah, it's brutal. So Ryan Mountcastle was named American League Player of the Week. He is finally turning it on, becoming the hitter that I know he is. He really struggled the first couple of months of the season. But in the month of June, he's 10 for 20 with 2 doubles, 3 home runs, and 9 runs batted in. And somehow he was named AL Player of the Week over his teammate Cedric Mullins, who's 12 for 20 in the month of June with a double, triple, 3 home runs, 4 RBIs, and 2 walks. Cedric Mullins also became just the 3rd Oriole ever to go 5 for 5 with 2 home runs all in one game, joining Cal Ripken Jr. and Brooks Robinson. So that's
good club to be a part of.
Yeah. On the bad news front, John Means not only tanked my fantasy team this week. Goodness gracious, it was brutal.
That -3 was rough.
Yeah, it really didn't factor in the decision because I'd lost by a lot. But John Means is on the injured list with a left shoulder strain. Apparently he has no structural damage. He's just like tired or something. Maybe his shoulder's tired from carrying the whole team on it for the first couple of months of the season. Let's see, keep it going. Orioles did take 2 out of 3 this weekend from Cleveland, including an 18-5 complete ass whooping on Sunday afternoon, which was just amazing. Like I was standing through a rain delay, which turned into a postponement on Sunday afternoon. It just was looking at my phone and like, oh, the Orioles score again and again and again and again and again. More runs. It was amazing.
Those are the days that you wish that you could, put some of those runs into your savings account and use them later.
Yeah, bank a run or 2. Yeah.
Watch the Orioles get shut out tonight, but they scored 18 on Sunday. So yeah, that was pretty good. Also, Grayson Rodriguez is now the top pitching prospect in all of baseball. He's down at Double-A Bowie. He joins his Bowie teammate Adley Rutschman, who's the top catching prospect in all of baseball. So if you get to see this battery down in the minor leagues, it only costs, $5 to go one of those games. You should probably do it. I think Grayson Rodriguez is pitching tonight, actually. So that's pretty good. I just said the Orioles are hosting the Mets for 2 games starting tonight, but then we go on the road to Tampa Bay for 3 starting Friday. So we'll see how that goes. A very positive Orioles update for once.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had one of those.
Mm-hmm. Cory, how about the Yankees? Who
as you said at the top of the show, the Yankees have forgotten how to baseball. We've reached the 60-game mark, which last year the season would be over. So to quote a certain reputable journalist in Monsters Incorporated, now is the time to panic. We're, finally a third of the way through the year, and for the first time all season, we face the Red Sox and we get swept. We held leads in the last 2 games of that series. Didn't matter. We're now 4th place in the AL East, 6.5 games back of the Rays. We have a -4 run differential on the season. How does that happen when you're the Yankees? We are averaging the fewest runs per game since 1972, which was also a 4th place finish in the AL East. And only 4 teams in all of Major League Baseball right now have fewer total runs this season than do the Yankees. We have 69 home runs, nice. But the MLB lead is like 25% more than that, like 86. So we're not even in the top half of Major League Baseball in home runs right now. The only reason that our heads are slightly above water, right, that being we're 2 games over 500 by some miracle, is our pitching, and that's specifically our bullpen, at least until this past week when we just blew it late in games against the Red Sox and the Rays. But our ERA does remain in the top 10 of Major League Baseball. But again, when you're scoring the 5th fewest runs in baseball, that doesn't really help you that much. Yeah. So that's where we are. We have forgotten how to baseball.
Yeah, if the Yankees are in 4th place, that means they're only 1 spot ahead of the aforementioned Orioles, who are, undoubtedly in 5th place out of 5. But, that's not looking good. That's not where you want to be in Orioles land.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than seeing, in my opinion, the most jarring number was the -4 run differential, because you look at record and you say 31-29, that's underachieving, but if your performance was good, if you were scoring a lot of runs and preventing
you figure eventually the record will regress to the mean.
Yeah, it'll get somewhere closer to an expected win total, or you can at least have the optimism that'll happen.
Usually, we did see a season not that long ago with the Orioles where that didn't happen.
Well, the Orioles also started to play better. That was like the 2012 season. The Orioles had this great record, even though they were very negative in the run differential. And in the second half of the season, they actually played better. But they didn't get bit by misfortune with that, so they kept winning, and the run differential ended up looking kind of even-Steven-ish, but they still won 93 games, which is not what you would expect with an even run differential. You expect closer to 500.
Right.
But so the Yankees have to play better. They have to improve their performance, which is obviously a much more difficult ask than simply a regression to the mean. And so I looked at the Yankees' numbers, and I was like, okay, well, who can get better that you can actually expect to improve? And I looked at it,
that's the tough part.
I was like, nobody.
No.
Nobody. Maybe Gleyber Torres will get back to hitting well, but I also have to expect him to get back to fielding poorly, which he hasn't really done lately. Outside the first couple weeks, he was really rough. He's actually done okay.
But the thing is, his hitting actually has been better over the past 7 to 10 days than it was prior to that. It's still not very good.
Yeah, it's still not fantastic.
But like every run that's driven in, it seems like it is being driven in by Gleyber Torres.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Judge is still hitting the crap out of the ball. He's been fine. He's getting on base a lot. Okay. Yeah, you look at run production on Baseball Reference and runs created and things like that. He's clearly the Yankees leader in that category. But guys like Gio Urshela, he had a couple of nice years with the Yankees, but based off of his prior years with I think he played with the Indians, maybe somebody else, he wasn't any good. He was terrible. Yeah. Like, he was borderline out of the league.
Giancarlo broke out of his slump briefly after I ripped him a new one on the show and very quickly returned to his slumber.
Yeah, Stanton is very inconsistent. You can't expect him to just come out and be MVP 59 home run Stanton, especially with the injury track record. Yeah. DJ LeMahieu has regressed significantly this year.
He has not been playing very well at all.
Like his bat has been dormant, especially given the fact that he was an MVP candidate in 2019 and 2020, and now he's just kind of back to being what we expect of him a little bit, because he started his career with the Rockies, and I think he made an All-Star game, and then he had a couple of years where he just was kind of irrelevant. Then he goes to the Yankees, and he's a revelation, and then he's now kind of back to where he was with the Rockies before he joined the Yankees. So I just don't see where it's going to happen for him, where I can feel like, okay, this guy is having a severe underachieving season, and we expect it to change. I perused the entire lineup. I was like, who's not hitting well that normally hits well? The only answer was Gleyber Torres, and I was like, that one guy, if he gets better, that's not enough.
No,
not even close.
No, I mean, I was doing the same thing basically earlier, and I couldn't agree more. There's really not anybody that I can point to and say, hey, if these few guys get better, and by the way, I think they can, then we'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be good.
But I don't see the guys who I think can get better, or at least not, sustain, not a sustained way. And then pitching wise, Corey Kluber threw the no-hitter and then promptly got hurt in his next start. And he's on the 60-day IL, I think, now.
60
I think
day.
they just put him on the 60-day
He's on 60, yeah,
this
I
past
saw that.
week.
Yep.
And then, who knows whenever Luis Severino gets back, who knows if he's actually going to be good, but we're still waiting for at least another month before that time comes. Like I mentioned, our bullpen wasn't very good this past week. Nobody else in the starting lineup is that good except for Garrett Cole, and even when Garrett Cole pitches, we can't win. Ask Andrew, he's got him on his team, and every time that he's out there, he has a decent game, and he still ends up with the -1 for the loss.
Oh,
It's a tough break. But
yeah,
it just looks like the Yankees. I don't know. I kind of look at it, and I'm like, I was doing that where I was looking and say who could improve, and then I'm like, well, I don't really see it. Then I started thinking, well, then why the hell were we so high on the Yankees if we looked at this lineup and didn't think any of these guys could actually hit? Like now, in retrospect,
we thought they could hit. DJ LeMahieu's supposed to be batting, 340 every year. Where's that guy?
Off of previous data, but we're not seeing that this year. But I think this kind of goes back. I think it was last week on the show when I mentioned that tweet that I had seen that said when the Yankees win, they can look like they're never going to lose again. And when they lose, they can look like they're never going to win again. And I think that we kind of come back to that where you see these players hitting so poorly, and for whatever reason, all of them, collectively and individually, just give that feeling of whatever the last version of them that you saw, that is going to be the forever version that you will always see of them.
Do you think there's any type of the weight of expectations having an impact here?
Probably.
Because, this is the first time that... the Yankees have been in contention the previous few years. But this was kind of the year that just about everybody was saying, oh, yeah, this team's winning the AL pennant. Because the Astros seem like they're out of the way, maybe. And it felt like the Yankees were kind of coming into their own. Like, this is the first year where it's like, you're not really a challenger. You're the hunted ones. And I don't know. There's some psychology behind that is certainly not something for me to discuss. I'm no expert on that, but we've seen it happen with other teams when they get expectations. Even the New York Yankees, who have had expectations every day since 1923.
Yeah, but when you've got a team that's still relatively young, a lot of these guys, were on the team and early in their careers with the team during these last 3 or so years, where yes, there's always those expectations because it's the Yankees. But expectations were at an all-time low for that team in terms of if they make it to the playoffs, great. We're going to be super excited, obviously, but we're not really expecting them to do anything there. We're not even really sure if they can make it because this feels like a rebuilding era for the Yankees. But then we kept making it to the playoffs, and we didn't necessarily win all our series, but we were competitive for the most part.
And you made 2 ALCSs.
We made 2 ALCSs, and now this year, all of a sudden, it's no longer we're still in this sort of rebuilding phase, and if they make it great, it's World Series or bust.
The idea that the team is having trouble because of the high expectations, I think
it's not a good excuse.
That is a bunch of weak sauce.
It's a terrible, absolutely terrible excuse.
Oh, yeah,
you can't be on the New York Yankees be like, oh, but y'all expected too much from us. Like, that's the job. That's what you signed up for when you joined this team.
No, but I think that's kind of the potential problem here is if that is the case, then we've got a bunch of soft guys on the team, and we need to move off of them.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it's tough to win that way. I also couldn't help but notice, my God, Clint Frazier sucks. That dude can't
He'll
play.
have these like 2 or 3 day breakout stretches where you're like, man, maybe he's finally breaking out. Maybe he's gonna be good.
And then he goes into hiding for 2 weeks. Yeah,
It's-
that guy sucks. My goodness, I peeped his numbers and I was just like, what? This guy plays this much?
I eased off the sell the farm, get rid of everybody except for Aaron Judge. I moved off of that for a little while because we kind of came out of it. We started winning some games. We started moving back up in the standings, and we were closing the gap on the lead in the AL East. I'm ready to sell the farm, and honestly, I don't think that there's anything this team could do this year that's going to move me off of that. We could get back into the lead of the AL East, and I'm still going to feel like we're inevitably going to fall back down into the bottom two.
Clint Frazier, in terms of wins above replacement, is resembling trough Chris Davis.
Oh, God.
He's at a solid. Currently, according to Baseball Reference, he's at a negative .9, and he's played 50 games. So if he played a full, let's say a quote unquote full season is 150 or more.
Yeah, we're
So
talking
just
about -3 almost.
Yeah, almost -3. Yeah, that's approaching Chris Davis land. Now the difference is that the Orioles finally, mercifully, stopped playing Chris Davis in the second half of that season. Otherwise, he could have set records for worst WAR for a season. But Clint Frazier's right there when I was because I sorted it by number of plate appearances, and I was like, Clint Frazier is that bad and has that many plate appearances. Why are they still playing him so much? It was just. I couldn't believe it. I was like, why is this guy in the lineup? You can't get somebody better than him? That dude's cheeks.
I mean, you can't get somebody better than the guy who's playing like the worst player in the history of baseball.
I mean, everything's bad. Bat's bad. Glove is worse. I mean, just everything sucks. And he was...
Is he in Chance Cisco territory? It sounds very much Chance Cisco-esque.
I would say so.
He gives a vibe, yeah. And there were times like where he had stretches where we're like, wow, this guy's amazing because he came up with no expectations as an injury replacement and he had a good week. Well, now it seems like they're trying to make him into some type of regular player and he ain't got it. Maybe he's just not that guy.
Nope.
And the Yankees don't get their regular tune-up against the Orioles. They don't play the Orioles again until August 2nd.
Yeah, that's the thing. Your mediocre record has been fattened by playing the Orioles a whole bunch. So it's not easy street for a while.
And we've avoided the red-hot Red Sox, who started hot and haven't really cooled off that much.
Yeah, they lost the division lead to the Rays just because the Rays are ridiculous and just keep winning.
The Red Sox are still playing really good baseball, swept us, and we still got to play them 16 more times? Holy hell.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. Plus, I mean, you got other series against the Blue Jays who were pretty good, and the Rays who obviously don't disappear ever. Like, this is a year I kind of was like, man, maybe they're not going to be as good. They're the same Rays. Doesn't matter.
Somehow.
Blake Snell gone. Who cares? They're good.
The Yankees have an off day on Friday this week.
That's unusual.
Before a 2-game set in Philly. So, that's weird.
Phillies aren't that good. Maybe you guys could beat them.
Yeah, they got the Yankees got the Twins tonight.
For the next 3 days. I mean, we better sweep that.
Well,
I mean, they lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles, so you know, you have to sweep them.
Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah. Yes, my Yankees are a train wreck.
Yeah. I guess speaking of trains, Georgia Tech took on Vanderbilt. Well, we played at Vanderbilt in the Nashville Regional NCAA tournament in college baseball. We were bounced from the NCAAs. This was rather unsurprising. Vandy is legit. Tech was all right. We played a couple close games. We made a bunch of mistakes. The game Sunday night went like, 14 innings or something like that? Or maybe it was only 11. I didn't stay up and watch, but we figured out to lose in extras to Vandy. So we're out of the tournament. But the guys had a good year, and we ran up against a better team, and they beat us, probably like they should. So
I'm a little confused, though. Why did you say, speaking of trains, to segue into Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech?
Vanderbilt's founding has something to do with, I think John Vanderbilt was like a train railroad mogul
Vanderbilt
type
is
guy.
named for Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was in shipping.
Well, then I missed I missed that completely.
Okay.
Well, anyway.
We struggle with our bougie people. We can't keep up with all this old money. We're clearly not a part of it. We've got 3 listeners on a podcast, and we work day jobs. So if we can get in some of that Vanderbilt grift, I'd be down for that. But unfortunately, not for us. No soup.
I didn't get into Vanderbilt, so forgive me. They should have admitted me, and then I would know this stuff. Their uniforms are ugly too. But
that is true.
They are very ugly.
Did you guys face Kumar Rocker?
no, we didn't face Rocker. We did face Leiter on Saturday.
Okay.
And he didn't pitch that great, but Tech made a bunch of. I think Vandy scored 4 unearned runs, and we lost 4-3. So, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, no. So their uniforms are ugly, like Purdue, which is Trains, the Boilermakers.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know that. Boiler up and all that jazz.
Anyway.
There you go.
Okay, sticking with baseball, but on the minor league variety. I went on a little road trip this past weekend, and probably spent too much money, but so I went to 2 minor league games. Tried to go to 3, in Birmingham, Montgomery, and Madison, Alabama. So that was a lot of fun. Got to see some pretty cool. The 2 of the 3 stadiums are interesting and weird. So like Birmingham Stadium is just built right in the downtown in a sort of, I guess like former industrial area. Like Birmingham's a very industrial city, or at least it was when the steel industry was there, and it's not so much anymore. So there's a lot of like abandoned buildings and a lot of train tracks and stuff. But like there's a park there now, and the baseball stadium, and a brewery, and a little eatery that we ate at.
Sounds like the Durham Bull Stadium.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean it's
Okay,
basically like it's like a bunch of former industrial structures and stuff around it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So I think the Barons did win that game. The Birmingham Barons, like their nickname is the interesting thing about them is their history. They've been around for like at least 100 years, and this is the minor league team that Michael Jordan played on for a little while. And like that's what they seem to hang their hat on. Not so much any of the silly stuff, although it was Pride Night and Disco Night on Friday at the same time. So like every few innings, there would be these dancers that would get on the dugout. They're wearing the big afros and like 70s era, shiny clothes or whatever, but also having a bunch of rainbow ribbons and accents on them too. I did keep score at that game. No WWs in my scorebook. So yeah, that was fun. And then Saturday night we drove down to Montgomery to see the Montgomery Biscuits take on the Biloxi Shuckers. So that ballpark was pretty cool. It was also built in an old train station, but like it literally incorporated the train station building into the stadium itself.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You didn't get a chance to see the sod poodles?
No sod poodles.
That's their name.
That's the Amarillo's sod poodles.
Oh my goodness.
I forget. I think they're the Diamondbacks
affiliate.
Yeah, affiliate. I don't remember. I think they're Double A. They might
There's
be double
so
A.
many bizarre
it's
names
great.
in minor league baseball. You got the Rubber Ducks. Like that's not even that bizarre, but it's still kind of silly for
a professional
baseball team.
Like the Bay Sox sounds like normal. Like
by comparison, for sure.
Like the Bowie Bay Sox, that sounds like a legit ass team, baby. We're the Bowie Bay Sox.
So that's 2 big trips for you, Evan, in 2 weeks, and 2 rainouts. What's up with that?
So like the next day, Sunday, we go up to Madison, Alabama, which is outside of Huntsville, to see the Chattanooga Lookouts take on the Rocket City Trash Pandas. So we got to the stadium. It was it was raining. It rained the whole time we were there. So we're standing around, and we go in the team store, which is jam-packed full of people. You can't really move around in there. The team store can't keep their stuff stocked because their name is so interesting and weird. Like everybody everywhere is just buying up all of it. So, like, if you want any Rocket City Trash Pandas merch, you have to drive to Madison, Alabama to get it, because their online store is completely sold out. So I probably spent too much money in there. Bought a couple shirts, a can koozie, and a souvenir cup, which is pretty sweet looking with their raccoon in a trash can shooting into space logo. So it's kind of too bad that they didn't play. The game was rained out and it's going to be made up as part of a doubleheader at some point, sometime. But it was still a fun time. Thank you for my friend Richard for driving me all over the state of Alabama. We covered the entire length of it, basically.
Jeez.
And for having me stay at his house and stuff. So, and congratulations on getting married last fall. I haven't seen him since then. And like the last time I'd been, going to a sporting event in Alabama was that Tennessee versus Alabama college football game back in fall of 2019. And oh, how the world has changed since then. How little we knew sitting there that night, with 100,000 of our closest friends. Something that might not come as a surprise, but nobody wears masks in Alabama, like, ever. Like,
yeah,
just,
I'm not shocked.
Yeah. Like, if I was walking around with my mask on, I felt very seen as, like, a northern liberal wacko, right? Like, this guy, he thinks people should ride in trains and not burn fossil fuels. Like, what? Crazy person from a big city somewhere. I felt very seen like that. We went to Waffle House one morning, and just a general, just enjoyed the experience. So, highly recommend going to minor league baseball if you can. Just go do it. And this is why Major League Baseball is so stupid for cutting minor league teams, because all these little towns would just lose their team. They just have no team. You expect all these people in the state of Alabama they want to see a baseball game, they have to drive all the way to Atlanta? That doesn't make a bit of sense, does it? Like, that's just ridiculous. But, you can get a pretty cheap ticket and get a nice seat and, see a ball game right in your little town rather than having to drive to Atlanta or the next closest major league city, which is Houston, Texas. Also not close to anything. But yeah, that was pretty cool. Our last, we've covered everything. We've covered the whole sheet already.
Yeah.
We're an hour
just
in.
Over an hour. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that was with technical difficulties.
Right. Yeah. Compared to our usual shows, we're just getting started. So apparently there's a subcommittee report expected soon regarding maintenance or expansion of the college football playoff. I happen to love the college football playoff, but I feel like expansion is not only obvious but inevitable, right? Like, there's so much money to be made by everybody involved, except the players, I guess. Like, why wouldn't they expand it? Like, you obviously don't kill the golden goose, but you can have a whole flock of golden geese. Just expand the playoff. Everybody makes money, and everybody's happy.
Do you hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability. So the question here is,
okay.
What money aside, right? Like, Evan raises, I think, the right point that because of money, it's going to expand. It's just going to. Do we think that it should, if money is not an object, do we think that the 4-team format that we have currently is the best format that we have, or do we think that it makes sense to increase to 8 or maybe to 12, as one article that Evan shared with us this afternoon said that 8 seems to be much more likely, and in fact 10 even seems more likely than 8.
I thought it said 12 was the most likely scenario.
No, right. That's what I said. That's what I'm saying is that 12 is more likely than 8, and in fact even 10 is more likely than 8. But 12 is the most likely.
Yeah, I mean, I've mostly joking said they should expand to 64 teams. But like, I'm fine with it. I feel like it's impossible to separate the money aspect from this because the whole point of it is to make money.
Well, right, but I'm asking more from a perspective of the point of the college football playoff from a football standpoint is to crown the champion. Do we need more than the top 4 teams for us to feel confident that the winner of this playoff is in fact the best team in college football? Do we need to expand it? Do we think that it's particularly likely that teams below that, and yes, from time to time we will end up having teams that were outside the top 4 win, because that's just how football works. But do we really think that we need that?
I mean, no, I think 4 is enough, just for determining who the champion is. I mean, teams outside if you just go by the polls and stuff, like the AP poll or whatever, the team that was number 1 was most likely the best team. And a lot of teams just claim a national championship. Looking at you, Alabama, for example. But it's. I think 4 is enough just for the purposes of crowning a champion and determining who the best team is. But like that's not the objective. Like that's not why they do this. Like that's not. Like I feel like you just can't separate the money aspect from the college football playoff. Because that was the whole point of having it, was to make a lot of money. College football inherently is about never really agreeing on who the best team is, or the most deserving, or the most accomplished, or the most whatever, because there's so many teams and so many conferences, and so few games that not everybody can play everybody, and the whole thing is subjective anyway. So it can't be perfect. And maybe I think 4 might be the best for, just keeping it simple, but there's too much money to be had, right? There's too many, deep pocketed, ADs and conference commissioners and school presidents and stuff.
And to that point, once we start talking about money, right, this, I think, really brings in the conversation about player payment, because here's the thing here. The whole idea of not paying players is supposed to be that they are student athlete, that the student comes first, that they are here to get an education, and they are being paid through a scholarship, and that is their quote-unquote payment. But by expanding the playoffs, I mean, we're not going to reduce the number of games in the regular season, I assume.
Oh, no. That would
by
be
expanding
giving
the number
back
of playoffs,
money.
we are expanding the amount of time that these student athletes are going to have to spend outside of class, because the more you expand the playoffs, the more of the games and the prep time that goes into the games starts to feed out of any potential winter breaks that the schools might be on during the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when you play a sport in college, you're basically an employee of the school. Certainly a revenue sport like football or men's basketball, like you're bringing in all this money to the school because you're there. It's not the other way around. And then also, because all this extra football money, it pays for everything else athletically at the school. Literally everything else. All the shiny facilities and all the non-revenue sports, all the women's sports, everything comes from this football money. So, there's I mean, a lot of schools were cutting sports because of the pandemic, which I thought was stupid anyway. But like, and Cory, you played a sport that was cut when you were in college for financial
That was
reasons.
before the pandemic.
Yeah, that was before there was a pandemic. A simpler time. But like, if the football money pie grows, then everything else gets paid for. So I mean, it's a win-win for everybody except for the athletes themselves. They have to play more games. Oh my God, Pete Alonso hit a 2-run home run just right away. So I'm fine with 12. I'm fine with 16 teams, 24 teams, 32 teams, 64 teams. Just
128 teams.
Why not?
Just let all of them in. Like, let's not even have a regular season. Let's just start the season with a tournament, and as teams lose, their season is over.
Well, that's what college football people say college football is. Like, it's a playoff every single week because, you have to be undefeated to really be in the mix for the championship.
Well, not anymore as we expand to 8 or 12 or 16.
There's 64.
I have absolutely no desire to watch Alabama paste the number 12 team in the country or the number 16 team in the country. Don't waste my time.
Well, the thing is, if we expand to 12, then the 12th team, the 12th ranked team in the country probably won't be in the playoff. It'll be like in that article, it said the 18th team as an example because you're probably going to have automatic bids. And so you're going to have a team win their division or their conference, but they're not even in the top 12.
This is ridiculous. We haven't had a good 1-4 matchup in the college football playoff maybe ever, except for maybe Ohio State, Bama, the first one. Since then, it's almost always a blowout because that fourth team doesn't belong on the same field with the top 2 or 3 teams. Hell, mostly it's the top 2. Usually it's just a matter of, okay, who's Clemson or Alabama going to blow out so they can meet head-to-head. Now, Ohio State's kind of thrown a little bit of a wrinkle in that. They played a very competitive game 2 years ago against Clemson that they lost late on a Justin Fields interception. And then they absolutely housed them last season. And then they got housed by Alabama. So, there's too many times where it's just like, I got one dominant team. Why am I going to make them play maybe like a BYU? Why am I wasting my time watching that? Why am I wasting these kids' time doing that? Like I
make money.
I understand it's about the money, but I'm also sitting here as a consumer. I ain't interested. Not interested in watching that. The entire purpose of college football is to grift money off these kids' backs anyway. I already feel a little bad about watching any of it because of that. I'm certainly not going to watch a shameless expansion of it to risk these kids' safety even further just to make more money off their backs to stick in the pockets of a bunch of fat, rich white people. Not interested. I mean, hard pass.
Who watches Alabama play Citadel? Nobody.
Bama fans.
I'm not watching Alabama. I am not any more interested in Alabama playing, I don't know, Iowa State.
Your Iowa State
and
Cyclones?
I like Iowa State, but I'm not watching that game.
I mean, with the 12-team playoff, right? Like, I mean, number 5 would play number 12. Like that would, and with the automatic bids, at least the way it was described in the article we read was like, the 5 Power 5 conference champions would go.
So I'm gonna watch 2 teams play to figure out who Alabama's gonna wax next week.
Well, Alabama waxes everybody, so like they're not a really good example. They annihilate everybody.
But that's the point. They're always going to be in it, and they're always going to be in that top 4, and they're always going to wax everybody that they play. Like, why don't we just name Alabama the champion before every season?
Well,
you probably could do that.
Yeah, it would be a 50-50 chance you got it right, based on the last 15 years or so. But again, the point though is even regardless of what Alabama is doing, whether they're just that much better than everybody else, there's always 2 or 3 teams that are head and shoulders above everybody else. And so we're just adding more of these mediocre, crummy conference. I won the Sun Belt, so I get in.
Well, they're like those teams are already going to be playing bowl games anyway.
Sure. So let them play bowl games.
the sixth automatic bid would be taken up by whoever was the highest ranked team of the group of 5 conferences.
Oh, great!
So, like,
So we get to watch Boise State.
well, I mean, it might be Boise State. Lately, it's been a lot of UCF.
Yeah.
They claimed a national championship a
Yeah,
few
they
years
did.
ago.
Daniel Tosh hyped that up on Tosh.0 years back.
Didn't they hang a banner?
I think they did.
Yes, they claimed a national championship.
That's just sad.
Yeah. I mean, lots of schools have claimed a national championship.
I feel like
Anybody can claim a
we
championship.
were supposed to move past the whole claiming championships with the BCS, and apparently that hasn't happened.
No. Yeah, that's like I said, this is what college football is. It's subjective. There's no one right way.
Well, I said, as a consumer, I am not going to find it entertaining to watch a bunch of teams that have no business being in the tournament getting blasted by good teams. Just, I can't do that. It's not fun. That's like watching some lame-ass game in September in week 3 after the first weekend, Labor Day weekend, where they actually try to get some good matchups on television, and they just stop caring, and then you get a whole bunch of cupcake games. That's like watching those, except they put it on in bright lights on ABC or CBS, and I'm just like, I don't care.
It's like watching Logan Paul land, what was it, like 30-some punches out of over 200 that he threw against Floyd Mayweather?
I did not pay for that fight.
I didn't watch it. I saw the stats afterwards.
Yeah.
He landed like 30-some out of 217 punches.
Well, to be fair to Floyd makes a lot of professional, talented boxers do that too. Maybe not to that extreme, but
still.
Yeah, I had zero interest in watching that abomination of an exhibition. Also, Floyd looked really scruffy. He needs to clean up his act.
He's old.
I don't care if he's old. He needs to cut his hair. I didn't even recognize him. I was like, wait, that's Floyd Mayweather? What's going on here?
Thought he was bald.
Yeah, he was. He probably shaved his head. He apparently stopped doing that for this fight, and he looked very scruffy, and I did not like it.
So now he looks like he's balding, which is...
He actually looked like he had a full head of hair. I didn't notice any receding hairlines.
What is going on? Why would you shave
his hair?
Maybe he got plugged up like Dion.
Or like
there's no way.
Or Brian Urlacher as well.
Well, yeah. There's no way Dion has all that hair. That's not real. That he got some Joe Buck.
He said it's not real. He said he was on TV smiling with all 500 of his teeth. And was talking about how it's great to have so much money. Now I have hair again.
Dion does look like he's just like his smile is ridiculous.
Yes. Like they said on SNL about Joe Biden about a couple years ago. You know, the guy who went to the dentist and said, "Give me the high beams."
Still better than Kirk Cousins' smile.
Well, his is just a little weird.
Yeah, it's awkward.
Everything he does is a little weird. Kirk's a weird guy.
So you don't like that, is what you're saying.
That's what we're saying.
Okay. Well, let's see. Unless wanted to bring this. We also got an ESPN alert a while back. Garrett Cole stumbles when asked if he used sticky substances while pitching, saying, "quote I don't quite know how to answer that."
So yes, he did.
Right.
Yeah, move on.
Like
so. Sounds like the goo was dripping in a big glob on the side of his neck.
Lie and say no. Like, how do you flub that question? It's like such a softball
especially because you
question.
know what's coming because people have been looking at his spin rates since they decided to go, full draconian about checking baseballs and stuff, and his and Bauer's and other pitchers' numbers have dropped as far as RPMs on their pitches go, and of course it's going to be a question.
Yeah,
how are you not ready for that, dude?
He's absolutely using it, and a lot of pitchers are right now, but stop it.
What Major League Baseball needs to do is approve a list of sticky stuff, because apparently if the regular rosin doesn't work, we have to have some sticky stuff that you can use. There's got to be something. If it seems like the regular rosin's not effective.
If you're gonna do that, then at that point, I'm all for moving the mound back a little bit or something like that.
I mean, I'm all for anything.
I'd rather do that than lower the mound. I'd rather move
all
it back.
all the other sports change every single year, right? In NFL, we always talk about, these are the list of new rules for this season. And then in basketball, they move the 3-point line back and the little. Then they change the size of the paint. That That
Yeah,
looks different.
We get rule changes every year in baseball, just in the minor leagues, never at
They never
the
actually
major league level.
Well, the thing
And they
is,
never get implemented higher
like
up.
in basketball, they moved the 3-point arc in for a little bit because nobody was making them, and then guys like Steve Kerr started becoming more valuable. So they said we can't have that, so they moved it back.
Mm-hmm.
Like Steve Kerr has the highest 3-point percentage in NBA history, but it's fraudulent because he accumulated most of those numbers shooting from a foot and a half closer. Like Seth Curry has the legit top 3-point shooting percentage in the history of the NBA. Seth Curry does.
Really?
Yes.
That is-
Steph is up there, but he's not number one. Seth is number one from 23 and 9 inches.
Well, Steph Curry sounds like he needs to step it up a little bit. He's clearly not very good.
Well, I'm sure if
Seth Curry is better.
I'm sure if Steph decided he was only going to spot up and shoot instead of shooting these circus shots that he does.
Yeah, he makes all the circus ones. It's
Yeah.
like me at the trap range.
Yeah. Well,
Only
except
making the
Steph
hard
hits the
ones.
easy ones sometimes too. He just doesn't get many of them.
Sure.
All right. So yeah, that's the end of our sheet. Do we have anything else to add before we get out of here? I am
Well,
hungry.
I'll shout out Rashonda's god sister Austin and her fiance Sean. Rashonda and I are going up to Connecticut this weekend, and they are having an engagement party that just so happens to line up with us being up there, so that'll be fun. But I know that a few people in Rashonda's god family listen on occasion, so they might hear this.
Oh, somebody listens to this show. That's
Nice.
pretty good. Yeah. Thank you for listening, because, that's different.
Thank you for selling the product, Evan.
Selling the product. Who's buying it?
Well, nobody. That's why we
No,
got to sell it better.
the whole point is that we make it free, but people still consume it.
Oh, this is the 147th episode.
Yeah.
The fact that we're still doing it shows our dedication.
Yeah.
We should
That
be
is
lauded
true.
for that.
Yeah. I only do the podcast because I like doing it. I'm not trying to be rich and famous from it.
Our next 3 shows will be each of our, in turn, 50th time hosting.
Yeah. So, Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin, y'all have hosted SNL 16 or 17 times.
Get on our level.
Yeah, we've each hosted this show 49 times.
Seasoned vets, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's about it. Unless anybody has any last minute shout outs, or unless the Orioles want to give up more runs.
That was my only shout out.
I
Eric,
think
you got
I'm
anything?
good. I don't have anything interesting to say this week.
Okay. So with that said, I guess that'll do it for this week's show. You can find this podcast wherever you are currently listening to it right now. In addition, it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. If you made it this far in the show, thank you so much for listening. And go ahead and smash that subscribe button so the podcast will be beamed directly to your device as soon as it is posted. Unless Apple's doing more weird stuff. Sometimes they can be a little sluggish. But yeah, you can follow our show on Twitter at SportsBallers18. You can follow us individually. Cory's at Cory Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67. And I am at Evan_Ash13. If you would like to interact with the show, you can certainly tweet at us. You can also send us an email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. Yeah, I think, am I missing anything?
We
Let's,
are on Mondays starting next week for the summer.
Oh, okay. Yes. Starting next week will be on Monday. So you'll have softball on Wednesdays.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see. So everybody out there, please keep in mind, might seem a little bit of a mirage if you live in Alabama, for example, but there's a pandemic going on. So get your vaccine and wear your mask and wash your hands and social distance. Don't be a jerk. It's just, general advice for everybody out there. Tell the people you love that you love them. Today's National Best Friends Day.
Hey.
apparently.
How about that?
Yeah.
And here we are doing podcast.
Yeah, doing this podcast. So I guess that'll do it for this week. So for Cory and Eric, I'm Evan. This has been the Sports Ballers Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.